Hi Dilip, how's it going?
Doing well. How are you, Ron?
Could have been better. I have a slight cold, so if my voice sounds funny on the recording, that's the reason.
No worries. I hope you feel better. It's a season.
Yeah, it is the season. Things are changing. Luckily, the weather's bright and sunny, but we wanted to do a theme for this Candid Conversation series. The last time it was snow in the background. This time it's probably drizzle or rain, something like that.
Actually, in real life, also drizzle and rain here in Seattle, so it goes well with the theater.
You are in Seattle, man. It's like 77 sunny days in the year or something like that. All the rest is raining for you, right?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty beautiful, so I like it here.
Yeah, if you like that kind of weather, probably that's a good place. All right, so welcome to Candid Conversations. I have a list of questions here, and again, last time Viren and I did one, it was fairly unstructured. Some of the feedback we received was that it will help to have a list of questions prepared ahead of time. So I want to make sure that I'm able to refer to that. So if you see me, my eyes darting around, I have a list of questions here. Likewise, you can, whenever you feel like it, you can turn the conversation around, ask me for opinions and views. Right? So,
Absolutely. I got a few ones that I want to pick your brain on, so let's make it two-way.
awesome. That sounds perfect. So let's start with this. So the orchestration, workflow orchestration landscape. Obviously, there are like a few big players, including ourselves, but there are also many projects and many vertical specific projects and so on. So it seems like a crowded landscape these days. So how do you see? Uh, oh, I'm sorry. I should say Dilip is the chief product officer. That's why I'm asking him product and these related questions. So, all right. So the workflow orchestration tool market seems to be quite active these days. Lots of players. It's I think it's for the better that there are more players and it's getting crowded. But uh, my the thing I wanted to know from you is how do you position one over the others? And since we are at Orkes, probably most comfortable talking about how Orkes positions itself.
So, one good way to, start thinking about this is like, really about what orchestration really is, right? So, if you think about it, like pretty much any software system that you're writing, it is a set of instructions. It's a sequence of actions that needs to be performed in a certain way. So it is a workflow, right? So you are, even without knowing it, whenever you're building almost any kind of a system, you're orchestrating it, right? So there have been frameworks and approaches that have already been there for the last 20, 30 years or so, right? The key difference between those and the what we call as like the next generation of like workflow orchestration systems is that one is that like things have been very much shifting left in the sense that like it's now all about empowering developers who are building systems, whereas like if you look at a traditional system like BPM, like business process modeling and notation, right? It was meant to be like built by a process analyst who will then hand it out to engineering, and engineering was all about just like, hey, look at it and implement it, right? Whereas now we see like quite a lot of times engineering teams are like taking in business requirements and like they are building the right approaches to solve that. And orchestration becomes like another angle where orchestration becomes important is that now you are building new applications or you are modernizing existing applications to take advantage of the distributed systems paradigm, right? Where individual components can be built separately, scaled separately, they have their own failure domains, etc. Bunch of benefits, but that brings about like a new set of challenges because now you are not simply orchestrating a workflow that's contained in like a closed ecosystem like a monolith. Now you have to deal with all the other complications of a distributed system. So the next generation orchestration systems are solving this, right? And they're shifting left towards developers being able to build these things from scratch on their own. The second is like they are solving the distributed systems orchestration problem, and that is one of the like one of the places where like Orkes really, or like the open source project Conductor really got its birth from, right? So if you ask about like Conductor or Orkes Conductor, it is one key differentiation is that it is built from like a problem space that was where developers had to solve these kind of problems, and this framework came about. It was open source by Netflix, and got like tremendous traction across different industries. So it is open source based. It is battle tested. So you are like when you're building on Orkes, you're building on a system that has gone through like different challenges in the field, and like all those learnings have been incorporated. You get that from day one, right?
Mm.
And the other aspect that where I think of like even within this new generation of like orchestration systems, like how Orkes is differentiated. One is that we see with our customers that when they want to solve a business problem, it's not just backend services that has to be orchestrated. Many times, like you had to put a human in the loop, and now with the power of like strong foundational AI models, we are seeing that you're bringing in the power of models also into solving a problem. What this means is that workflows needs to be able to seamlessly weave in backend services,
Mm.
APIs, insert humans at the right place, and
Mm.
also like leverage the power of AI models. This is a very unique aspect of Orkes in that like you can build workflows that span all these like different types of entities, right?
Yeah.
So this unlocks very unique use cases. Another one would be like in the same class of like creating workflows is that we have like a developer centric model in terms of like how you express your business logic, right? So if you think about it, like when you're using a system like Orkes, you can decouple your business logic and the implementation of the actual actions. And now this business logic is like the flow, the execution flow, right? And with Orkes, like we believe in giving the power to our users, our developers on like how they want to express this. So we have like customers who are like writing their workflows as code using one of our SDKs. We have a good number of like our customers like prototyping and initially building the workflows using this visual UI that we have. So in a way, it is like giving engineering teams like world-class tooling to visualize what they're building, write code for it, or mix and match, right?
Yeah.
And this what this really does is that we internally call it as like 10xing your coding momentum, or like 10xing the productivity. You can like really build like very complicated or like very unique like workflows and bring it to market very fast, because you have that decoupling in there. And another way in which like I would say Orkes is differentiated is that this is like built as a platform and not just simply a library that you're hooking into, or like a point in time solution, because there are like some solutions out there which are like all about like, hey, here's like, I don't want to name it, but like here's like a library, you can incorporate it. It does a bunch of like maintaining the state, etc. But what Orkes is it's an application development platform. So we have seen this many times with our customers in the sense that you have like one team bringing in Conductor or Orkes Conductor into their team to build like one of their workflows, and soon enough, like more and more teams start building on it. And this platform empowers you to do that, because it has like role-based access control, for example, and secure sharing. So let's say you have a workflow and you want to share that with another team who wants to build on top of it. You can you can like effectively do that, right, and get like full visibility. And the other, if you go down a little bit more to the infrastructure side, right, like one of the other things is that this is built for scale, in the sense that like Netflix started this project, like they maintained it for many years, and it was built to handle that scale. So we have like customers like running billions of workflows, and whether your use case requires like running 100 workflows a day or a billion a day, you don't need to do anything special. Like you focus on building the logic, the workflows, the implementation of the workflows, writing code for that, and it just simply scales out of the box, right?
Mm.
And one additional aspect I will actually call out is that as engineering teams are building these workflows, they're not simply building, they're operating it. So it's not only about the act of creating a workflow and making it
Yeah.
easy for them. We know that it's important that they are able to run these workflows effectively, observe them on day 100, day 1000, whatever that is, right? And the tooling and the model that like we provide is like I would say like very differentiated, in the sense that like let's say you have a million workflows running and like you get alerts that like, 10 of them are fading. You can quickly go down using the Conductor UI, for example, find what are the workflows fading, find which exactly the task is fading, get the debug information right there. If you were to do it without this kind of like a platform, you're debugging for on like a very distributed system might be days. Here
Mm.
you get it done in like minutes. And this is something that I keep hearing from customers, how it increases their operational agility to respond to like errors or like new requirements, etc.
Yeah, that all that makes sense. I'd like to add one more point. I was on a customer call recently, and they were telling me they use Orkes, uh, the platform, and Conductor primarily as a process modeling tool, similar to how they were using BPMNs before.
Yeah.
So while we are empowering developers and we observe this trend, we have not left behind the other users also, right? They are still able to benefit from our tooling and our platform. Uh,
Absolutely. That is some, yeah, absolutely. That's one feedback also we get from customers is that this allows like collaboration, not just
yeah,
between the development teams, but with their, with their colleagues in like, business analyst teams or like DevOps, because you get visibility into how things are doing. Like, for example, I heard like one of our customers, like one of the very interesting benefits they get from using Orkes as their platform is that now their management can see that like which teams are like driving the workflows, or let's
yeah,
say like, something gets slowed down, they can quickly point out this sub team is causing that, and they can go and put more resources into fixing the
yeah,
slowdown there. So
yeah. That's definitely it. Yeah, this is good. Thanks for the deep dive, actually. So, next question on my list. I have to give you some setup for this. Uh,
yeah.
so uh, obviously every year we see new technologies getting introduced. Market trends shift almost every year or two. So we already spoke about one shift happening, the one where you mentioned there's a shift left with focus on development teams. uh, what other trends are you seeing, and what's the longer term vision that goes beyond these few year cycle of trends?
Yeah. Actually, yeah, it's a good question because, like, there are like multiple trends that we are seeing, like in the space, right? So let's maybe like build up on like the earlier one, like the shift left, right?
Mm,
So one of the things is that like today's businesses, like what we are seeing is that they want to like, push innovations faster. They want to be able to respond to like, market trends or like new opportunities faster, or like, respond to issues happening, right? And what this means is that, like, when they look at like their existing systems, many of them were built at an era where, like, maybe the scale is not that high, or maybe like the need to move faster is not as high as it's right now. So we see companies investing into modernizing their stack because they're preparing themselves for the future. And when you're
mm,
modernizing, what that really means is like kind of making it ready for like the scale that they are expecting, or making it easier for their teams to debug the systems. And this is a place where, like, a good example would be like breaking up a monolith into like distributed system, so that there's better agility in the in the sub teams. Or another one would be like moving from like on-prem to cloud. These trends, and along with that is also the trend of like application modernizing, like changing the way the application is built. So one more layer up, so that it also gives you the kind of benefits you see when you go on the infra side, when you went from on-prem to cloud, right? So that is like a big amount of our customers are adopting into Orkes through this modernization part, right? The other one is like the greenfield efforts, like today, like more and more companies, like when they have to build a new application, or like a new service, or like a whatever new thing, new solution, right? They are looking at orchestration as the programming paradigm,
mm.
right? Because they are seeing that, like, hey, there were like patterns like choreographed microservices before, which soon, like, people found out that it's great when you have like 4 microservices, but the moment it gets bigger, it becomes like a very complex thing to like manage all the interconnectivities, right? So we see that when you're building new applications, people de facto start thinking about, okay, let's build it on like an orchestration platform. Many times Conductor, but even the other ones, right? And you also see all the cloud providers, for example, like starting to advise like their customers when they're embarking on new new projects to like look at this thing. I kind of say like this is similar to what happened like maybe 10, 15 years ago, where containerization took the industry by storm. Till then everybody was deploying on VMs. Containers came in, and Kubernetes became like the go-to container management. Today if you look at like almost any engineering team, they would be thinking of deploying their applications using Kubernetes,
Mhm.
the container deploying containers, right? We see a similar thing happening where like companies are looking into orchestration.
Yeah.
And the other side is that like with the advent of all the AI models, right?
Mm.
We are seeing that like companies know there's tremendous potential. Like there's like ways they can disrupt and like do more with their lines of business with the power of AI models. And now the question is that, as in like we all know, we see look at ChatGPT and we know this thing is so incredibly powerful. Now the problem people are facing is that how do they bring that into their business applications, right?
Mm.
And this is where like we see like having the ability to again seamlessly weave in the power of models and the associated things like vector dbs to enable rags scenarios into a workflow that's already there, like is going to be very useful. The comparison here is that like if you there are some solutions which allow you to do AI orchestration on its own, where
Mm.
like your core business flow runs elsewhere and you had to call into here. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you can like put those into the same thing so that it makes a lot of coherent sense, right? So that's a trend that we are seeing, people wanting to take advantage of this. I would add one more and maybe turn the question back to you, right? Because when I talk to like customers and like study the market, etc., there's always this talk coming about like how agents are coming to revolutionize like how you help your customers, or like how you make your workforce more efficient. And maybe like you can actually tell me a little bit more about how that trend is coming up in your point of view.
Um, okay, so I was hoping we'd get to that after a few more questions, but since this is on point, let me answer that. So there are two steps we have to think about, right? So one is the recent developments, let's say over the past 5 6 years. When I say recent, uh, since all these huge amounts of compute started getting allocated to AI research and AI productionization, and like you mentioned, chat gpt has been a watershed moment. uh, After that, if you look at the number of applications or number of new startups that somehow or the other use AI for a particular vertical, that number still is growing, right? There are hundreds of companies which provide solutions in the say sales space, and now there are hundreds more which improve on that using AI somehow or the other. We use one for call transcription and intelligence for that, right? So similarly, there are separate ones for marketing and so on. There is one benefit to using purpose built tools like that, where all the energy is focused on expanding that particular vertical's possibilities and empowering users there. The other side of that coin is, if you go to companies or the enterprises we are talking to, typically they have already invested a lot into code and services that they own and they have built over time, and they would like to benefit from all that uh, investments that they have, all the services they have fine tuned for their needs, uh, and also benefit from AI. So one direction I see for AI agents especially is where they allow companies to benefit from their existing investments into software infrastructure. So that could be microservices, that could be specific libraries they have built for themselves, that could be specific tools they have built that can be um, invoked through tool calling or function calling and so on. But again, the value unlock that happens here is that you already have all these existing code, all the existing services and so on, and AI agents will enable you to deploy them for new use cases or more efficiently for existing use cases. So I see that happening in the next few years. So right now, it's still in the infancy, right? There's not many production examples of AI agents as such, apart from customer service. Everything else is some application of an AI technology, typically text processing in one form or the other. But once you bring in this autonomy aspect, the agency aspect, and start deploying agents and building agents for specific purposes, I think these things will get unlocked one after the other. Next 2 3 years will be very interesting to see in this space.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I would actually add, maybe, and if probably you also heard this thing from customers, etc., is that like when enterprises are looking to adopt these AI models into whether it's being orchestrated in existing workflows or building agents that are under the hood orchestrating, security and governance
Yeah,
is kind of coming across as like the one of the most important things. So
yeah,
whatever system they're building, maybe it's because of the new technology, maybe the power of this thing is like so amazing that you want to make sure like it is used in the right way, and
yeah,
it's like very well very observable, and like you can govern it, right? And that's that whoever is building these systems, like whether it's us or like whoever else in the industry, I think it's super important that this is like kind of like the foundation on top of which you are building the
yeah,
solution.
yeah. And this keeps coming up, right? Even in my customer calls, I'm seeing that one of the main concerns people have is because of the fundamentally unpredictable nature of all these LLM models. You never know when it will hallucinate or give an untoward response. So they want to make sure there are proper boundaries about everything, and security, governance, and compliance, all three come up all the time. Auditing comes up all the time.
Yep,
Which in a way we are in a good position to benefit from that need, right? We can serve that need because we are already built a tool, a platform which has at its core role based access control and all these auditing tools and enables everything else.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that definitely the conductor. Like, I mean, another reasons customers like using this, for example, let's say versus like, some other options or even the open source is that some of this, like Orkes Conductor gives you a security posture that is like enterprise grade, right? So
Yeah,
role-based access controls, like the ability to have dedicated clusters so that you're not sharing the address space with anyone else, and, the change data capture, for example. Like surprisingly, quite a lot of customers like the fact that they can literally track every single activity that's happening in the cluster, send it to a queue for like further archiving, etc. So yeah,
yeah,
absolutely agree.
yeah. So let me continue with the line I had prepared before I forget.
Yeah.
It's a, one thing is like we spoke about opportunities so far, right? What's the challenge? Like, let's say one or two big challenges that you see, not just Orcus, but I mean, of course, you're best qualified to talk about what Orcus is seeing as a challenge, but as an industry, what's a challenge that comes up?
Yeah, I think like we kind of maybe touched base on this a little earlier, but I see like the biggest challenge is like this category creation, right? Like I mean, we are like bringing forth like this modern way of like building and scaling and observing applications,
Mm,
and when people ask me like who's your biggest competitor, I would say that like it's actually the homegrown systems that are in place in many enterprises that are that probably not scaling yet or are not observable or like doesn't have like the underlying resiliency that like we offer. So I think like a lot of challenge here, not just for us but like any company here, is like getting the mind share and of like engineering teams or like architects and folks like that, and kind of like putting the effort to make this to be the de facto standard, like when
yeah,
you're building applications. For example, like one of the prominent users of like Conductor, right? When I was talking to them, what they were saying was that it is like when we started using it, it was one team, but soon the team started understanding like the broader company started understanding the power of that.
mm,
Now at this point in the company, like if you are building a new, let's say, new application, the first thing that comes to their mind is, okay, let's start with the conductor workflow, let's start defining the task,
mm,
etc. within the company, it became the de facto standard. And now the challenge is like, ensuring that it becomes like such a de facto for like the industry as a whole, right? So that I would say is like a common challenge, but that's something that like, it's also exciting. I mean, there's always a sense of excitement when you're bringing something that's so useful, where like once people try it out, the bulb goes on, and like, it's kind of
Yeah.
like a
The
gateway
aha
into like a
moment.
new world.
Yeah.
The aha moment, absolutely. Getting teams or engineers or architects to getting their first aha moment, because once you do that, like, there's a very high probability that like, the momentum will go only higher from there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually true. So, like, shifting gears slightly, like how you already answered some of this, but like how do you see it evolving in the next few years? And like just orchestration tools as such, and how do you how do you hope that Orcus will lead some of that change?
Yeah, so the one of the things will be like that there will be strongly a continuation of the shift left, where like we are seeing development teams taking more of an active role, and like adopting like platforms like Orcus, where like even the grammar of like the workflow
Mm,
building is like developer centric. You have the while loops, you have like the waiting for an event, things like that, right?
mm,
And the second thing would be like I would say like the big wave of AI orchestration. So
mm,
literally like with a, quite a large number of applications out there are primed for disruption using AI.
mm,
And there has been a lot of noise, a lot of advancements in models in the last 2 3 years, but now it's going to be the time of like actual end user or like end customer applications taking advantage of those AI models.
yeah,
And that's where like orchestrating of those AI models and AI logic becomes like the next big wave that's going to come in the orchestration as a
yeah,
space. Right?
yeah. And we are
So,
building features for that. So let me assure everyone that we are hard
yeah,
at making sure we are building everything for that.
yeah.
So,
And
uh,
I would also add one more thing, right? So whenever a lot of times people think of what AI as is like fully autonomous system, right?
yeah,
But from our point of view, like AI is really about empowering like your workforce or your customers or whoever it is, right? So I think it is very important for us to think about AI in terms of like that that co-pilot or like that entity that adds to the power of humans, right? So
mm,
that's why like I think one trend you'll see is that that fusion of humans and AI working together in like a workflow or like that,
mm,
or like a business flow, right? That would become more and more prominent. Of course, there will be like fully autonomous systems coming up, or there will of course be some systems that are not at all touched by AI, but you'll see more and more of those systems that are a fusion of AI and
yeah,
humans, and of course backend services.
yeah. And I'd like to take this opportunity to plug some of our team's work also, that we are making it even easier and more intuitive to make that possible, to interweave AI and human activity together into a workflow. So, yeah. So, the one more I would like for us to touch on is, so you mentioned this, Netflix started this project, and then they open sourced it and maintained it for a while, and then Orkes took over the open source version, but Orkes also has the enterprise Conductor. So can you talk a bit more about how important the open source version of the project is, the community building aspect of it, and so on?
Yeah. I would say like open source is like a core or a foundational part of our identity as a company, right? Because the genesis of Orcus is really Conductor, which came out of Netflix and was open source and adopted by all these companies, right? And
Mm,
what that does is that like it gives us like a few advantages, not just for us but for also for our community and customers, right? First of all, open source means that it's developed in the open. So it comes with like a lot of the best practices that are audited by the community members. So
Mm.
the best things bubble up, right? So you have like a very very stable and like stable core that that will perform, that is shown to be performing, and that adds a ton of trust into our product, right? So when a customer adopts Orkes, they are not only adopting like the effort by our company, our engineers, our team, but they're also getting the benefit of like the contributions from a broader pool of like talent, right? So that's that's the open source advantage and the trust that comes with it.
Yeah.
But it also gives our customers one more additional layer of trust, in the sense that like, hey, you are not getting logged into like a closed source vendor system that if you, for whatever reasons, if you want to move away from it, it's going to be like a lot of pain to do that. Here, we are very clear the fact that like this is open source core. So if you want to move out, you have the ability to take your workflows. And if
Yeah.
there's like any Orkes only features, and most of them are security and operational related, it's very clear on what is in the open source and what is not in the open source. So customers are making a very informed decision, right?
Right. Yeah.
And this has been like instrumental into our adoption, because we have customers coming from like existing open source users. We have customers coming net new to Orkes, but
Mm.
all of them, like they know that they are getting into a partnership with a company that is like very firmly grounded on open source. And
Mm.
we continue to be that. Like it's our commitment that like we'll be active, we'll be contributing back, and like we want the innovations to flow to the broader community, whether they are Orkes users or not. We want that this community to keep up its momentum and like maintain this passionate base of users.
Yeah, and like we should use this opportunity to plug that if somebody is interested in distributed systems and has tried Conductor, worked on the OSS project or so on, we still have open roles. They should apply.
Absolutely, always be hiring. Yes,
We want good
it's
people to join us. Let's have fun together, doing something fun.
absolutely.
So yeah, with that, I ran out of questions to ask you today. I'll make another list for some other day, but for now, I think this is a good time for me to take a pause, and thank you for all the time you've spent so far.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure, and thanks for taking the time as well, Ram.
Yeah, no problem. This is always fun.